So when the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and divided them into 4 parts, 1 part for each soldier, also his tunic. But the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it to see whose it shall be." This was to fulfill the scripture which says, "They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots." So the soldiers did these things, but standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her to his own home. After this, Jesus, knowing that all was now finished, said to fulfill the scripture, "I thirst." A jar full of sour wine stood there, so they put a sponge full of the sour wine on a hyssop branch and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
Our subject this afternoon is true greatness and true life. And I want to begin by asking you a question just to consider momentarily inside your own mind. What do you believe was the greatest event in human history? If you had to pick one event, one moment that was the greatest event in human history, what would it be? Well, not long ago, one of my kids was completing a school project on this very topic. And I caught him doing, which I've got to be honest, I pretended I wouldn't, but I think, if truth be told, I would have been guilty of 1,000 times over what he was doing. He was asking ChatGPT exactly what the most significant events in human history were. Now, I want to give you what our future robotic overlords actually categorise for us and see whether there are any of the answers that you got. I'll just do the bronze medal down. Number 3, most significant event in history, the end of World War II. Anyone? It's pretty good. It doesn't really address the start of World War II, but nonetheless, the end. Number 2, the discovery of penicillin. Very significant. But number 1 was astonishing. I'm going to say it blew my mind. Number 1, the 2005 English Ashes victory over Australia. And I just thought, artificial intelligence is just as irritating as every English person I've ever met. It will probably too receive a dukedom or a knighthood or whatever else all that cricket team got for turning up on those days for the one time that you've beaten us. I'm not bitter about it. No. In essence, I will tell you what it was. The answer that it gave was the moon landing. And in case you've missed it, according to our future overlords, the greatest accomplishment in the history of humanity was our departure from the Earth. That was the moment that it says things have reached their zenith, maybe as a warning for our future. I wonder, dear friends, regardless of your background, what would you say that it was? Of course, there's no shortage of opinions for us to consider, are there? We have, from time to time, achieved many incredible, wonderful things. However, despite all of that, I'm utterly persuaded that you could combine the greatness of every event that we said together, all of those events that are on the list from ChatGPT, all of ours individually and collectively, and I want to offer you that they are nothing in comparison to the event that we just had read out to us here in John's Gospel, the death of a penniless preacher, an out-of-work carpenter from the backwater of rural Galilee 2,000 years ago, Jesus of Nazareth. That despite appearances to the contrary, the death of Jesus, you may have heard as a tragedy or a failure. You may have heard it as a myth or a metaphor. It's very possible you've heard it as a symbol or a sonnet, but it is none of those things. The death of Jesus is quite simply the moment when true greatness in human history was most clearly on display. Nothing else comes close. And of course, it's worth saying that it's not only me who thinks that. Jesus, and it is an astonishing thing to consider, has influenced this world more than anyone else. It's so astonishing mainly because he did none of the things that we normally associate with power and influence. Have you considered that? He didn't fight in a war. He didn't write a song. He didn't write a book. No one drew a picture of him while he was alive. He didn't live in a palace. He didn't sit on a wooden throne. He didn't even travel very far. None of the things that we normally associate with importance for humans were the things that he did. And yet this man has shaped the world more than any other human being who has ever lived. And fast forward 2,000 years from the day of his death to today, and there's been billions of us, billions of people who believe the exact same thing that I do about the significance of Jesus' life and death. The question is, why? What is it about his death that is so significant, so special, so profound, so powerful? Well, I want to offer to you, as I investigated Christianity for myself as an adult and confronted Jesus in the Bible, it was this very event, this very incident, his death, which made me confront the terrifying and yet eventually tremendously exciting truth that I had never actually understood Christianity at all. You see, the promise at the centre of the Christian faith is that if you discover what truly happened on that hill, on that cross 2,000 years ago, then you will discover true life for yourself, the life that you were made for, both in this world and the world to come. So this afternoon, all we're going to be doing over the next 10 minutes or so is I'm going to be seeking to answer two questions from that passage we had read out to us. Firstly, what did actually happen on the cross? Secondly, why did it happen? Before spending a moment or two considering what the answer to those questions actually mean for the lives that we live, regardless of whether this is your first time at anything religious or you've been coming to these sort of things for a very, very long time, what are the consequences for us? So first of all, what actually happened? Well, like many events of the past, it's got layers to it. It's like an onion. Okay, you peel off one layer and there's another layer underneath. Now, this was the problem for me. I understood the surface layer, but I never dug deeper. So what I want to do is show you three layers. The three essential layers, I believe, that are critically important to understanding the truth of Jesus' death. First of all, the historical facts of what took place. You see it here. John, who was a friend, a dear friend and disciple of Jesus, he is the author, the biographer, and the theologian who writes the Gospel of John, the biography of Jesus we have here. He outlines for us what the other Gospels also verify. The eyewitness accounts record that on the last night of his death, the last night of his life before his crucifixion, Jesus was the victim of a terrible injustice. He was betrayed by one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, if you've heard that name before. He was then abandoned by the other disciples. He was arrested and sold out by his own people group, who handed him over to the highest authority of the land, Pontius Pilate. In your Bible there, look at page 55, and you'll see at the very beginning of chapter 19, it says these words, Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. Pilate was a reluctant involvement in this actual event. The Jewish people handed Jesus over to him. He didn't want a bar of it, but under pressure, Pilate threw him over to the Roman soldiers. Jesus was beaten, flogged, and then, go back to verse 18 on page 56. At the end of page 55, we read that Jesus is crucified. Now, for those who saw crucifixion in the flesh, they have offered for us over human history that it is the most horrific way to die. It was used by the Romans as not just a punishment, but also a deterrent. It had maximum pain to produce maximum gain at deterring any future misbehaviour by their citizens. Jesus was nailed hand and feet to a wooden cross, hoisted up on a hill that in some languages is called Calvary, but in another is called Golgotha, and then left to asphyxiate slowly to death. Crucifixion could take days, but for Jesus it only took 3 hours. Look at sentence number 30. After 3 hours, we read this. Jesus asked for a drink, and then when he had received the sour wine, you see it here, he said, "It is finished." He bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Jesus dies. Now that's the first layer, the historical account of what took place, the facts of the matter. Jesus, an innocent man, unjustly treated, murdered, killed. Now it's essential that you know all of this. Utterly critical that you do. But here's what you need to understand, and I want to offer to you, it's very, very common for us to miss this next part. It's very possible to understand all of those facts, to hold them as utterly true, and yet not experience the true life that they promise. I mean, after all, we've seen history long enough to know that innocent people die, innocent people are often unjustly treated and killed. So the knowledge of this event taking place does nothing in and of itself. No. The knowledge that actually produces transformation in life comes by digging another layer lower. It's when you actually creep beneath the surface of the historical facts and read much of the motivation behind Jesus' activity that you realise something astonishing, staggering, surprising, indeed radical and revolutionary. What you notice as you read through this passage, and we heard several little hallmarks of it, was that this event was not a surprise to Jesus. I don't know if you picked it up. He knew that it would happen. But it's more than he just knew it. Look at verse 28, sentence number 28. After this, Jesus, knowing all was now finished, said, to fulfill the scripture, I thirst. I just want you to focus on those 4 words, to fulfill the scripture. John, the biographer, he repeats those words over and over again, particularly throughout this chapter. What's the point of those words? Well, John is helping us to see that the events that take place are not random, they're not by chance, they're actually events that have been promised for thousands and thousands of years. What does that mean? If Jesus died in order to fulfill the scripture, difference here, please. What it means is that Jesus did not just know this was going to happen, he designed for it to happen. No one took Jesus' life from him, he gave it willingly. He died on purpose. And this is the million-pound question, isn't it? Why on earth would he do that? After all, people willingly die for any number of reasons, but what on earth is the reason that Jesus would have to do so? And if I'm completely honest, this was the thing I didn't understand. The problem was I didn't know I didn't understand it. And that's often the problem with not knowing things. You don't know what you don't know. Now, there's a million things I don't know that I don't know. This was one of them. Why did Jesus die? I could give you the rote answers. I'd gone to Sunday school. I'd gone to school scripture. I'd done a whole range of things at church. I could have told you the answers that I thought my parents wanted to hear. But if pushed, if someone had asked me as an adult, why did Jesus die? What was his motivation? Why did he choose to do it? I would have said, well, it's got something to do with sacrifice. So the power of the death of Jesus has to do with the sacrifice of a good, innocent man dying for others. And the reason I would have thought that is because that concept, sacrifice, it does something to us powerfully. It reaches within us. We all admire it. I don't know if you've seen the film Saving Private Ryan. Has anyone seen that? Has anyone not seen that film? If you're under 40, probably not. I'm going to ruin it for you. We win. Okay, yes. It's good stuff. It's set in the Second World War. Now, in that film, Tom Hanks plays a character called Captain John Miller. And he's given a squad of 8 men who are given a very, very specific purpose, a very specific mission. This little squad of 8 men are given the purpose of rescuing one soldier, the aforementioned Private Ryan. Why? Well, the beginning of the movie starts with Private Ryan's mother receiving 3 telegrams from the Department of War in the United States. You see, she's had 3 sons die in the same week over in Normandy, over through the European part of the conflict in the Second World War. 3 sons die within the same week. She gets their death notices on the same day. And so the American government decide we're going to get the 4th son and we're going to rescue him so this poor woman doesn't have to go through what she's already been through. Now, the movie revolves around these 8 men willing to risk it all to save the life of someone they've never even met before. to rescue Private Ryan, to save him. Now, the end of the movie is bittersweet. Do you remember this? The mission is successful. They rescue Private Ryan, played by Matt Damon. They get to him. However, in the process, all 8 of them die. The final scene, almost, bar one, is Tom Hanks' character lying bullet-ridden as he dies. To sacrifice yourself so another can live is an incredibly noble and selfless thing to do. It's no wonder we admire it. And for many of us, that's what we think of when we think of Jesus. And we think that the horror, the physical horror of the crucifixion is kind of the power of the cross. But my dear friends, now if you've zoned out till now, in Australia I normally do something like this. Wake up, listen. When you look closer, one more level down, take off one final layer into the cross of Jesus Christ, into his death, you see something that radically changes its meaning, that radically makes it different to the sacrifice seen in Saving Private Ryan. There's far more going on in this death than modelling love and sacrifice. And we see it in crystal clarity in verse 30, sentence number 30. Have a look at that, my dear friends, and I'll read this for you again, and I want to offer to you that there's a detail within this sentence that changes everything. Jesus has asked for the drink. They've given him the sour wine. And when Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Now, as far as final words go, that doesn't appear like much, does it? It is finished. It's only 3 words in English, but in the Greek that is recorded for us by John, it's one word, a Greek word, tetelestai. Tetelestai, it is finished. And here's what I want to say to you right now. If you don't understand why Jesus says that, you will never understand Jesus. You will never understand Christianity. But if you do, if you get this one thing, it unlocks everything else. You see, tetelestai, that word, has a very specific meaning. Yes, technically it means it is finished, but not in any negative sense, like England in the last Ashes series, when Johnny Bairstow walked out. It is finished, not like that. It's not it is finished, surrender, negative, failure. It's it is finished, mission accomplished. Did you remember your last exam in senior school in your A-levels when you threw down the pencil? Tetelestai! And you think your best days are ahead of you? If only you knew. You'd do anything to go back to then. Or when you've paid off your mortgage. Or when your final child has left for university. Tetelestai! Out! Not I am finished, surrender. It is finished, done, complete, over. Do you understand the consequences of what this means from the words of Christ on the cross? This is more than Jesus saying he knows he will die. It's more than him saying, I am going to choose to die on purpose. No. He is saying his death is his purpose. That success in his life is his departure from it. That he has come into the world with a mission, and it is in these final moments as he lay dying that this mission is accomplished. But what is that mission? That's a hard question. It's one people find very tricky and difficult, but it need not be difficult. Jesus tells us with crystal clarity what is his mission in life. And in one of the other biographies written by Luke, Jesus is recorded as saying this, I have come to seek and to save the lost. My dear friends, what is his mission? It's not what. It's who. His mission is you. Jesus came to live and to die to rescue you. From what? From the punishment that we deserve. From God for rejecting his true greatness and saying no to his true life. You know, Jesus, he's the one who tells us more than anyone else in the Bible That even though we were made by God for God, we were made by him for him, we were made in order to have a loving relationship with God, that true life in its definition is not just the life we live here and now, but life, eternal life in a relationship with God, that life we were created for is something all of us have rejected. Not one of us has accepted the terms of God. Instead, we've rejected him. We've rejected his greatness, we've rejected his life, and that's what the Bible calls sin. The consequences of that are astonishingly horrifying. It means one day when we die, and we will die, we will face God in judgment for the life that we've lived. And can I be honest with you? I used to think that the judgment of God would be based on my behaviour. Have I done enough good things and not done enough horrible things to get through? But that is not what the Bible says judgment is about at all. We're not judged on behaviour primarily. No, our behaviour is a symptom of a heart. We're judged on whether or not we know God, whether or not we have a relationship with him, and all of us will be found guilty because none of us do. And yet despite that, the life-transforming message of the Bible from page 1 to the end is that no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've seen, what you've done, no matter the history and the baggage that you bring into this room today, no matter the secret shame, the things that you could never admit to anyone, otherwise you'd be ostracised, no matter who you are, God loves you. And I mean it. He really loves you. He loves you more than you've ever loved anyone in your life. And we know that. Why? Because he sent Jesus, the one he loves the most, to die at the hands of the ones who have rejected him, to take the sin of the ones who've said no to him, so that we could become his sons and daughters, so that we could have our sin forgiven. Jesus died in your place as your substitute. Now, understanding that as Jesus died, God took the punishment that we deserve and he gave it to his son, that Jesus willingly accepted the punishment from his Father on our behalf. Understanding that changes everything. It flips Christianity on its head. You see so many people, and I'm sure amongst us this very day, believe that the message of Christianity is do good, get good. Be good, get good. Be good enough, you'll get rewarded at the end. But that is not what the cross of Jesus Christ tells us at all. The cross of Jesus Christ tells us that the message of the Christian faith is not do good, get good, it's you're not good. Yet you will receive the greatest good you could possibly imagine. The most evil act of history, the death of Jesus, is actually the greatest act of history. The act in which God's grace and glory is most clearly displayed. My friends, the consequences of that change everything. You know, the very final scene of Saving Private Ryan is an incredibly powerful one. In that scene, the second last one, I should say, Hanks dies with bullet holes, and then the camera fast forwards. It goes to another scene, if you might remember this, with Private Ryan, now in his 80s, with his wife and children and grandchildren around him, and he's in Arlington Cemetery, if you've been there, the military cemetery. Gee, the Americans, they know how to do military cemeteries. It's beautiful. And he's walking up and down the headstones, and he gets to Captain Miller. Do you remember this? Captain Miller. And if you remember, the wife and the children, they're a bit far away. And Private Ryan remembers the final words that Captain Miller said to him. You see, Captain Miller, Tom Hanks, as he lay dying, he looked at Private James Miller and he said these final words. He said, James, earn it. Earn it. And so Private Ryan, 50 years on, falls to the graveside of Captain Miller and he says, I hope that I've earned it. I've done my best. I've tried to remember what you've said to me. I hope I've earned what you have done for me. And it's obvious at that moment, if you have eyes to see it, that he has spent his life with those final words like a millstone around his neck. Earn it, earn it, earn it. And he calls out to his wife, darling, was I a good man? Have I been a good husband? Have I been a good father? And our heart is meant to warm to that scene, of course, but my dear friends, on the cross of Jesus Christ, as he lay dying, he did not cry out to you and I, earn it. He cried out, tetelestai. It is finished. Your sin paid. Your debt wiped clean. True life available now. You can go free. You don't need to be good to get it. You couldn't be good enough if you tried. It's yours, but with one condition. Only if you stop trying to earn it and realise how desperately you need to receive it. You see, 3 days after Jesus was killed, he rose from the dead, and he promises, as John records in chapter 20, that anyone who trusts in what he has done will receive this true life. Through the true greatness of Jesus Christ, you may have the true life of Christ now and forever. He promises that if you trust in him, your life will be changed and transformed forever. You will have a relationship with God. You will enter into it today, and it will be yours forever. Now, you know what's interesting? Even though I'd heard this kind of message a myriad of times, an enormous amount of times, I still had thought Christianity was a club for good people. But I'd had it completely upside down. Jesus died for sinful people, for sinners, people like me, and people like you. So here's what I know to be true. In a crowd of this size, there are many amongst us who have never come to Jesus and put their trust in him. I know that to be true because I spent the majority of my life sort of around the edges of it, or come into things like this and not quite sure what to do. But it may be at this very day that God is actually speaking to your heart and saying, stop running. Stop trying to earn it. Instead, accept it. Put your trust in my son. And so I'm going to finish now by praying. Now, the prayer's not magical. It's not Harry Potter. There's ordinary words. But I want to invite you, if you're in that moment where you actually do want to put your trust in what Jesus Christ has done on your behalf, to repeat the words or words like them silently inside your heart after I say them. And say yes to God. Accept his offer of life. Please bow your heads as I pray. Dear God, I know that I am not worthy to be accepted by you. I don't deserve your gift of eternal life. I am guilty of rebelling against you and ignoring you. I'm sorry. I need your forgiveness. Thank you for sending your Son to die for me so that I may be forgiven. Thank you that he rose from the dead to give me new life. Please forgive me and change me so that I may live with Jesus as my ruler and my Saviour. Amen.